Hello, welcome back. United Monologue, nice to see you. Time to chat about Manchester United again. What an exciting thing to do. It's kind of an amazing thing what a difference a couple of wins makes, isn't it? You just feel different watching Manchester United when they're winning 3-0 and 4-1 and putting in some goals and getting some results. And I'm not even sure they're playing any better than they were before. 1-1 draw in Arsenal and losses before. It feels different when you've got a cushion and it doesn't matter so much if chaos happens. You're not sitting there worrying what calamity are we going to visit upon ourselves that ruins the evening. If you're already 3-0 up, it kind of doesn't matter if someone drops a clanger. So it's been nice watching Manchester United the last couple of games. Sociedad and Ipswich. It was Ipswich, wasn't it? No, it was Leicester, wasn't it? I'm just thinking all those dreadful teams in the bottom. I haven't been here for a while. I've been away a bit for work and so jet-lagged and lost and whatever. But I'm back and I'm excited to be here and I'm excited to think and talk about United. Since I was last here, there's been so much to think about. There was a bit of a turning point almost the day after I last uploaded, which was Jim Ratcliffe giving an interview or two and talking about the future of the club, thinking and talking out loud and answering some questions about what was going on and what was likely to go on in the future. And then the reveal of the new stadium, obviously, which I think is so worth talking about. And since then, it feels like, to revisit my prior theme of confidence and the mental side of the game, a small change in the atmosphere can precipitate spiralling positivity in the team. Rasmus Højlund has scored a goal at last. Garnacho has scored again for the first time since November. It does look like those players' viewpoint has been renewed. And that's exciting. That's good to see because so much rests on the intellect of those players, the way that they feel and conceive of themselves in the context of the team and the league. So Højlund, I don't know if he's going to get swapped away in the summer or binned off or whatever, but I've always had a strong, I don't know quite why, but I really want him to do well. It might be because I'm here in Scandinavia thinking, come on, our Scandinavian lads or whatever, but I also think there's something in him, and I don't know, I'm not a coach, I'm not a professional football man or anything, but there's something in the way that he plays and the way that he holds himself and in the things that he's shown he's capable of doing that makes me think he has high potential. He could be an excellent striker. And this is why I'm so interested in that razor's edge of confidence and mental strength, because if a player with tremendous potential falls down the one side of that blade, they become a Januzaj, let's say. That's probably unfair. I don't like singling out people, but people who you think, wow, they could have been so good and they never quite fulfilled their potential. Maybe the better idea there is Ravel Morrison or someone who showed tremendous potential but couldn't make it happen. But then if you're showing that potential and you come down the other side of that edge and you just get the right support at the right times and the right lucky breaks at the right times and the right contracts and the right coach and the right environment, you can turn that talent and that potential into results over a number of years. And I want that for every United player, and especially the ones where I'm looking at them, I'm thinking they could be so good. Talked about Garnacho several weeks ago, just the ability to do that kind of overhead kick against Everton, to execute something that phenomenal, shows you that there's potential there. No bad player can do that. But there's enough maybes in the makeup of a young player, of any young player, but of Garnacho, of Højlund, of, Kobe Mainu. Young players are rough and not quite polished, and they need things to go their way in a number of different dimensions. One of the most important of which being their own self-confidence and their own mental preparedness and maturity and whatever. That a really high potential player can turn out to be, the graph goes like that or the graph goes like that. And just small differences at this early stage can extrapolate out in different directions over time. So I'm so delighted that Højlund scored, that Garnacho scored, and hopefully the snowball rolls down the hill from here rather than, but it's only been a couple of games and we mustn't get carried away. United will lose more games before the end of the season. But hopefully within the next few years, we'll start picking up more wins than losses and we'll go into a new era with the club in a new stadium in 5 or 6 years, apparently, and be a winning team again and be a great dynasty again and all this stuff. The new stadium, the plans are amazing. It looks, in a way, fantastic and in a way completely inappropriate at the moment. And I think a large part of that is just seeing something in perfect architectural visualization form when we know that Manchester and that area, Trafford, is kind of run down and the current stadium has its kind of rustic charm. It's weird to see something so futuristic and perfect and kind of CGI in that context. It also it definitely does look like a circus top. That was my first thought. I looked at it and I thought, oh yeah, big top circus tent, ridiculous clowns. But having heard the explanation, it's trident. It's it's speaking to the iconography of the club. That sort of makes sense to me. And I think these things, it's like the name of a band. They become what the band is. So the Beatles is neither a good nor a bad name, but the band makes the name. And and there are undeniably great band names and undeniably terrible band names, but most band names are like just fine. And then the band either is great and therefore makes the name great. And the same thing will be true of the stadium. If the club is great and the team is great, then the stadium will be an icon of greatness if it ever gets built. And this is the thing I ended up thinking after, an hour or two of going, ooh, wow. I started thinking, yeah, but will it happen? And I think the likelihood is actually, honestly, probably not, because even if the club can fund the stadium build, which I think is a big if, given the way the finances seem to be or are being reported to be, even if the club can fund the stadium itself, it's so wrapped up in this wider regeneration project. And that means that the plans at large are very reliant on the economic plans of the government. And if there's one thing you probably shouldn't rely on, it's the economic plans of the UK government. We will see how it goes. And maybe it's like a sort of cart before horse thing, that doing projects like this is the thing that stimulates growth. But I think growth is the thing that stimulates projects like this, probably. And I don't think any of us are particularly confident of healthy economic growth. I'm not an economist either, by the way. So take everything I say with a sack full of salt, because I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm a passionate fan and I have a strong feeling about all of this. I'd love it to pan out. I'd love Manchester and Trafford to be a centre of amazing, exciting things. And I'd love for people to travel there from around the world to spend time basking in the glory of Manchester United. Honestly, not necessarily at the expense of local and long-time fans. That's an interesting aspect to this as well. A 100,000-seater stadium, you would think would be able to accommodate anyone and all who want to enjoy it. But there will be season ticket holders that will fill a lot of those seats. There will be hospitality that accounts for an enormous amount of those seats. So corporate will be some significant percentage of that capacity for every match day. And so, and then particularly with United, you've always got the tourist allocation. There's going to be seats for people travelling to see the one game that they might be able to see in their 5-year sort of cycle of being, I've been to United once. I've been to Old Trafford once in the last 15 years. And it was 2 years ago for Erik ten Hag's last home game of his first season, Chelsea. It was the second to last game, but it was the 4-1 win against Chelsea. It was brilliant. I loved it. But that was the first time I've been in years, because I live abroad and I don't get to the stadium. And even if I lived in Manchester, I probably wouldn't afford, I wouldn't prioritize financially to be at every game. But especially with the prices going the way they are. So what's my point? There's going to be loads of space allocated to corporate. There's going to be loads of space allocated to international, one-time visit fans. And so a 100,000-seater stadium sounds like an enormous amount, but maybe that's only going to leave space for 20, 30, 40,000 regular fans, legacy fans, or whatever the hell the Glazers want to call them. I think it's important that the fans get respected in all of this and get the weight they deserve in the consideration. There's a lot of talk, of course, about, we're listening to the fans. We're going to do everything. We'll see. I believe it when I see it. The stadium looks cool in the drawings. I'll believe it when I see it. And boy, do I want to see it. I'd love it to be the reality of the dream. But we'll see. We'll see. And another thing we will see is whether United can end this season on a high. I'm interested to consider the value at this point of the Europa League, because that's all we've got left to worry about. We're okay in the league. The league's whatever. We're going to finish between 11th and 15th, or it's basically not relevant now. Playing some games, getting some reps in, blooding some youngsters, whatever, that's all fine. But really, the thing that matters now is, can we beat Lyon over 2 legs? Can we progress? Can we get to the final? And can we win the Europa League? And there's a long way to go. Quarterfinals seems like we're almost there, but we're not almost there. There's a lot of football to play. Lyon are a decent team, and we'll need to do well to beat them. That's the truth. And then we'll play an equally good or better team in the semis, most likely, and we'll play an excellent team in the final. And, we could win it. United on their day can beat anyone. And the question is, do we really care very much? And I'd like to argue that, yes, absolutely. It's very exciting for 2 reasons. One is that the Europa League is a legitimate competition in its own right. And in 2017, when we won it under Jose in Stockholm, I was just about to move to Sweden to take up a job and leave the UK for the first time in my life. Not for the first time, but live abroad and be somewhere else. And it was in Stockholm, and then there was the attack at the arena in Manchester that happened in the week leading up. And I had a very busy period in my personal life there where I was just scrabbling to sort things out before I left. I got offered a job, and 3 weeks later I was living here in Sweden. And so that whole thing, just on a personal level for me, the run to the final and the win feels viscerally important to me. It felt cool and exciting, not in the same way as winning in 99 did or whatever, but it was a moment in the history of the club, and it mattered, and it felt a way. And the Europa League is not the Champions League, but it is a legit competition. Cup Winners' Cup in 91, important, right? Europa League in 2017, important in theory, and it may not have quite led to what we hoped it would. But this year, winning the Europa League may be more important than it ever was then, because we're not going to qualify for Europe at all through the league. And if we win the Europa League, we qualify for the Champions League next year, and that's an unbelievable heist if we manage to win it. Heist of the century to finish 14th in the league and go into the Champions League. But if that happens, the reward for United could be enormous financially, of course. I was just looking up the prize money for the Champions League, and first of all, it went up by 20% this year on the previous year, which is incredible, to account for more teams and a bigger format and stuff. I imagine it will be more again next year. But it also basically, it depends obviously where you finish and how well you do. But you might expect the club to bring in revenues of 50 million, 60 million euros more in the Champions League next year than not in the Champions League. And that's just from the prize money for being in the Champions League. That's not even taking into account additional match days, home matches. If we're only playing in domestic competitions, we will have 45, 50 games next year. But if we play in the Champions League, we'll have 55, 60 games next year, maybe more. And so having home games. Sorry, that's not all home games, is it? Of course. But, we'll have so many more games to sell tickets for, so many more match days for fans to be at the mega store and buy whatever beers. And it's important. Revenue to the club could be increased 60, 70, 80 million euros next season if we're in the Champions League compared to not. And that matters hugely just for the bottom line. We know the finances are kind of whoa at the moment. The other thing is, though, that the prestige it brings and the belief that it brings, and we're back to this recurring theme, the mental side of football. If Amorim next season is managing a club that isn't in Europe, how do the players feel about themselves? How does Amorim feel about himself? How do the fans feel about the project? How do the ownership feel about the project? And how do players potentially considering signing for United feel about joining a club not in European football compared to a club in the Champions League, potentially doing well in the Champions League? The difference could be enormous. And there we talk about divergence. Again, we're on a razor's blade looking at the future of the club. In one direction lies magnificent new stadium, turned around finances, exorcised Glazers, and a winning team with Champions League football. And on the other side, a team not in Europe, a team failing to get the funding together for a new stadium, failing to get the project and the government money in the government side of things in line. And maybe in 5 years from now, we're still in a rundown old stadium, not really looking forward to the next 5 years with a new manager and a newly recycled squad and quick postscript. I've got a few notes down here. I didn't even write this down, but it's just occurred to me. Bruno Fernandes is unbelievable. I don't know what bee was in Roy Keane's bonnet. I think he was just wanting to have a fight with Ian Wright, but ridiculous. Bruno Fernandes has shown over the last 3 or 4 appearances since those comments were made public that he could not be more valuable and beneficial to the club. There's no way he could be, even if he was more like Roy Keane. And I love and respect Roy Keane as an icon of the club and as a hero of my boyhood. But he couldn't have been more wrong. This idea that Bruno's petulant and he's a whiner and a crybaby, it's just not true. He's emotional. He's clearly got a demonstrative, emotional, romantic side to him that, some people don't find attractive or appealing. I'm sure Roy Keane thinks, oh, that's rubbish. I wouldn't be like that. But you don't have to think that's what you'd be like. You just have to think, oh, what an unbelievable footballer, what an unbelievably magical player, creative, aggressive, hardworking, inspiring, exciting, enjoyable, and just such a good attitude to the game that he plays. I adore Bruno. And I think he cemented that point of view in me when he was asked about Roy Keane's comments, and he said, I really respect Roy Keane. I think he's wonderful. He's an icon of the club. I'm just doing the best I can. I'm working hard. I've got things to improve on. That is the perfect thing to say, because you are a phenomenal player, but you're humble enough and real enough and respectful enough to not say, oh, that dickhead doesn't know what he's talking about, but to say, yeah, he's got his opinion. I get him. I respect him. But I am me and I'm doing what I'm doing. And you can't argue with what he's doing. 30-plus goals and assists again. And there's no player that has been better for this club in the last 10 years. He's just, you can't say enough good things about Bruno. Thank you. That's all. Postscript over. I'll see you again another time. Thanks for watching.